The first thing to realize about SEO is that good SEO takes time. It's no use trying to do SEO and hope that you're going to be at the top of Google in this time next week. It's just not going to happen, at least not if you use proper SEO. There are tricks you can use that will get you to the top of Google, and shortly thereafter will get you thrown out of Google. So they're called black hat techniques. You don't want to use those. Now, there are a lot of SEO companies who will try to convince you that if you sign up with them within 4 weeks, you'll be at the top of Google. Some of these confuse SEO with pay-per-click. Pay-per-click basically is an auction system. You've all seen it, where if you do a search in Google, there's normally sort of 3 or 4 adverts displayed at the top, and those are adverts. You pay for those. It's an auction system, and the more you pay, the more likely you'll be at the top of the advert section. This whole course is not about pay-per-click. It's about SEO, search engine optimization, and it's about getting you to show up in the organic search results. So don't believe any claims about instant results. And Google also has a section within their website about hiring an SEO company, and again, it will give you a list of things to look out for, things you should ask for an SEO company before you employ them, and also it sort of will give you some indication of realistic results. It's important to realize that bad SEO, what's called black hat techniques, can possibly get results in the short term, but can also get you banned from Google completely. And by banned, I mean so banned that even if you type your company name in, you still won't get found. So all the techniques I'm going to show you in this course are what are called white hat SEO techniques. They're techniques that Google approves of. Now, whenever anyone contacts me, the first thing they say is, oh, I want to be at the top of the first page of results. Now, that's just not possible sometimes. If you think about it, let's say you had 20 SEO companies and they all promised to get you to the top of Google. Well, only one person or one company can be at the top of Google. I mean, it stands to reason. So you've got to be realistic about your results. As I say, not everyone can be at the top of the first page. Ideally, you want to be on the first page of results, not necessarily the top, but certainly on the first page. And the difference in the amount of interest from customers that you'll get between being on the first page and even at the top of the second page is enormous. There's an old SEO joke, in fact, that says, where's the best place to hide a dead body? Answer, page 2 of Google. Nobody looks there. It's an old joke, but it is true. Back in the day, people would do a search and they'd look at the 10 results, and if they didn't like what they saw, they'd go on to the next page. The way people search has changed these days. Normally people do a search, and if you're not on the first page, instead of looking at the second page, they'll do a different search, a slightly different query. So if you can't be at the top of the first page for your preferred search phrase, then make a list of other more easily obtainable phrases. You've got to be realistic, and as I say, don't believe any claims from SEO companies that will guarantee results, because as Google points out, nobody can guarantee results. Not even people at Google will be able to guarantee results, because things change to a slight degree every single day. The other thing to concentrate on, especially when you start off with SEO, is to concentrate on local searches. So for instance, I'm in Perth, Western Australia, and the 2 local suburbs near me really are suburbs called Wanneroo and Joondalup. Those would be the largest areas close to me. So if I was starting off a new website, what I could do is concentrate on whatever my product or service was, combined with the word maybe Wanneroo or Joondalup or Perth. And then as time goes by and you get better standing with Google, then hopefully the results for broader searches will start going up and showing up in the search results. Now, something you should be very careful of is not to over-optimize. In Google's exact words, they say write websites for visitors, not for search engines. And when Google give advice, they don't speak English, they speak Google, which is a slightly different type of language than normal English. So the phrase write websites for visitors, not search engines, a translation of that essentially is do not over-optimize. There is something called the Google Webmaster Guidelines, which I'll constantly refer to within this course. And those are guidelines for webmasters. A webmaster is basically someone who looks after or creates a website. And it's very important that you read these Google Webmaster Guidelines before you even think about doing your SEO, and really sort of learn them off by heart. Look at all the information on the guide and really think about it from Google's point of view. Now, if you've never seen the Google Webmaster Guidelines, and I do urge you to go and look at those now, you just simply go to Google and search for the phrase Google Webmaster Guidelines, and this first item that comes up is actually on the Google support website. And I'll go and click on that. These are the Google Webmaster Guidelines. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in here which you have to read carefully, and quite often you have to read between the lines. There's 3 sections here which are quite useful. Help Google find your pages. So we'll look at this in more detail later. And then there's help Google understand your pages. Lots of good stuff in there as well. And then help visitors find your pages. And again, lots of stuff in there as well. So all of these sort of things we'll talk about on the course. You know, how to use, for instance, page speed insights to measure the loading speed of your website. You know, check that your website appears correctly in different browsers. So all sorts of varied information there. Then there's some quality guidelines here. Again, you need to read through those. And then there's the basic principles. And as you can see, the first basic principle, look, there it is. Make pages primarily for users, not for search engines. And there's also some other advice, like don't try and deceive your users, avoid sort of tricks to improve your search engine ranking. Google doesn't disapprove of proper SEO. What it doesn't like is when you start playing sort of fast and loose and using SEO tricks, you know, black hat techniques, which, as I say, work in the short term, but in the long term they just won't work, and they'll probably get you banned. And you know, as it says, you know, use some common sense, make your website stand out in the field, make the website unique, valuable, engaging, quality content basically. And then down here there's some specific guidelines that, you know, things it doesn't like here's an old one, hidden text or links. Back in the day you could have a section at the bottom of your website with a black background. You could put a list of all your keywords and they're in a white text, so you basically have white text on white background, so it was invisible to people, but Google and the other search engines would read it. And back in the day, you know, when Google first started off, that would actually work, but that sort of behavior now will specifically, you know, it will annoy Google basically. It's going to get you banned. And you know, you should take care about this. You know, it says here, if your site violates one or more of these guidelines, then Google may take a manual action against you. A manual action basically means Google just killed your website. It's being banned from Google, and once they have banned you, as it says, once you have remedied the problem, you can submit your site for reconsideration. But Google has a long memory. It doesn't forget and it doesn't forgive. So your best bet is to stick within the rules, don't take liberties, do good SEO, which is what this course is all about, and don't try any of these sort of sneaky sort of tricks you can see listed up here, because, as I say, in the short term it might work, but in the long term it's going to harm your website big time. So don't be tempted to take shortcuts such as buying incoming links. If you do a little bit of SEO research yourself, you'll find that one of the things that is important for SEO is incoming links. So an obvious temptation is to just do a search for companies that will sell links to you, and all of a sudden you've got lots of links. Trouble is, if you go back to those Google Webmaster Guidelines I was talking about, it specifically tells you not to buy links. And if you do, Google will find out and Google will ban you. That said, if you do a search for, you know, something like buy links to your websites, you'll find there are loads and loads of places where you can buy so-called quality backlinks. Now this explicitly breaks Google's terms and conditions of service, so, you know, just don't do it basically. I know it's tempting, but don't. There are some search engine companies that will, as I say, use black hat techniques, And instead of improving your website position in the search engines, you'd end up either going down in the search engine listing or getting banned altogether. Now, I know I've mentioned this a few times, but it's vital that you understand that you don't want to take liberties with your SEO. You want to do it properly or don't bother. But certainly don't do bad SEO. This is another page on Google about link schemes, and it will tell you there that buying or selling links that pass what's called PageRank, i.e. value to your website. If this involves exchanging money or exchanging gifts or anything like that, then this is specifically disapproved of. So excessive link exchanges, what are called reciprocal links, you link to another company, they link back to you. Again, back in the day, that might have helped. These days, there it is. You can see it in black and white. Google doesn't like it, don't do it. In the same way, other things we will cover in this course are things like guest blogging and article marketing. Again, they would have worked really well in the past, but you can see there, do not do it. Google doesn't like it anymore. And certainly using automated programs or automated services that create links to your website. There's lots of them out there. Again, Google doesn't like it, and it's not going to help. And if you go down here, you can see there's lots of other information about, even advertisements. If you run advertisements specifically to generate links back to your website, again, that's disapproved of, and it's going to harm you. You might think, oh, let's go out and find as many directories I can find where I can list my website. Well, again, Google specifically, look, there it is. It mentions it, low quality directories or bookmark sites, don't really use them because it's not going to help. I mean, here's a trick that a lot of web developers like. They still do it, even though they shouldn't do. A lot of web designers, when they design a website for someone, they'll stick a footer at the bottom of each page of the website saying, hey, this website's designed by so-and-so, with a link back to their website. And especially if they use the same link on all the websites that they create, again, Google will get wise to this and take a very dim view of that. So there's the information. As I say, you can go and have a look at it yourself. Just do a search within the Google support section. So there is this support.google.com area specifically for webmasters, as you can see at the top there. And if you go and look at that, there's all sorts of interesting stuff there, and there's more information down the side here. So as I said, be very careful about hiring an SEO company. I'm not saying don't do it, but what I am saying is be very, very careful to hire a good one. Unfortunately, there's an awful lot of bad SEO companies. I think on the list of trusted professions, SEO is possibly marginally above sort of real estate agents and politicians, possibly on the same level. It's not a very trusted profession, SEO, because there are so many people who are bad at it and just frankly trying to rip you off. If you do a search for something like hiring an SEO company, you will find there's lots of advice here. So, for instance, 7 questions to ask before hiring an SEO company, 9 questions to ask, 34 questions to ask. You might want to sort of look at these, compile a little list of things, and be prepared, basically. An obvious question that people don't seem to ask SEO companies, which I find amazing, is the simple question, well, how well do you show up in SEO? So the idea of SEO companies using pay-per-click advertising to advertise their services when they don't actually show up in the organic search results is, think about it, it's ludicrous. What I mean by pay-per-click is normally you have adverts at the top here. So if you typed in something like, I don't know, SEO companies in Perth, you probably find a couple of adverts at the top. And if they show up further down here in the first page, fair enough. But if they only show up in the ads and they don't show up in the organic researches, that's a pretty good indication that they're not very good. So as I say, just use common sense when hiring an SEO company. And also, ideally, make sure you've got an opt-out. Unfortunately, SEO does take time to get results. So you can't hire an SEO company and a week later decide they're not achieving anything, because that's too short a time. So to be fair, you'd have to give the SEO company sort of a minimum of sort of 3 to 6 months, but ideally you want to organise a 30-day opt-out period or something like that, and if they're not willing to give you that, then I'd say walk away from them. So as I say, treat them with caution. Google does actually have some advice about hiring an SEO company. there is this video. There's the link, and if I click here, I'll just open it up.
Hi, I'm Miley Oye, and I work with Google Search. I'd like to share advice to help you hire a useful SEO and prevent hiring a bad SEO, one who you might pay a lot of money without positive results, or even worse, one who implements shady practices on your website that result in a reduction in search rankings. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. To some, SEO seems like black magic. Having worked with Google Search for over a decade, what I've learned is that first, it's not black magic, and second, if you want long-term success, there aren't any quick magical tricks that an SEO will provide so that your site ranks number one. It's important to note that
Right, that's enough of that. You get the idea. That video is actually 11.5 minutes long, so it's well worth watching. So just search for how to hire an SEO on the Google Webmasters YouTube channel. Google straight YouTube, same thing. They do have their own Google Webmasters channel on Google, so check it out, and there's lots of good stuff in there. Again, we'll talk more about this later, but again, I'd encourage you to watch this video. I won't run the whole thing now, you can watch it later. But what it's already emphasizing is basically what I've told you. There's no shortcuts, and be very careful about hiring an SEO company. Again, if you go to support.google.com, you will find there's more advice there. I'll just click on this to open this. So there's the video we just had a quick look at. If you come down here, do you need an SEO? It gives you lots of good information here about, what sort of things SEO should be interested in and questions you should ask. So for instance here, some useful questions to ask an SEO company include, obviously, can you show me examples of your previous work? Do you follow the Google Webmaster Guidelines, which I've been banging on about? It's very important that everything you do with SEO complies with the Google Webmaster Guidelines. And as you can see, there's other things here. What kind of experience do you have, and what are the most important SEO techniques they implement, and how long you've been in business, that kind of stuff. And as I say, if you go down here, you'll find there's more information here. As it says, no one can guarantee a #1 ranking in Google. There it is. That's from Google's own website. So if anyone guarantees you a #1 ranking, walk away very fast. If the company won't explain what they're doing and they're very secretive about what they do, again, don't use them. Some SEO companies will demand you link back to them. Again, don't do that. Choose wisely, as it says. Do your research. Be sure you understand what they're doing and what you're paying for. And also some other information there, and things to look out for to try and identify a bad SEO company.